Welcome to the show, guys. Joseph Robert, the fantasy football counselor, ready to dive into starts and sits for NFL. Can you believe it? Week 14. Going to go over the latest news and notes here as of it is only Wednesday, December 6th. I may do another show on Saturday to get you guys up to date. Going to go over the latest news and notes. I'm going to pull up my optimizer here to show you the optimal starts at each position and go over the matchups here. Jim cannot make it today. He's having some computer issues, so I'm going to take over and do the show on my own, give you guys the full breakdown of all the starts and sits, making sure you guys are ready for the week. Now, again, we're not going to be doing a full preview, but we're going to be going over all of the optimal starts and sits and the latest news. So if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys hit the subscribe button. I've linked it below. And also, guys, launched a brand new talk show. Go follow the Joe Camo Show. I've linked it below here on YouTube and, of course, available on Spotify and Apple. I've linked it below, guys, the Joe Camo Show, compelling interviews. I just had a tight end on, Zach Sutfeld. He used to play for the Patriots and the Jets, and he gave in a lot of inside information on what it's like to be in the locker room with Tom Brady. Is the NFL scripted? His kind of perspective on that. So lots of great interviews, guys. The Truth to Sports. Follow the Joe Camo Show. I've linked it below. All right, let's talk about the latest news here. Couple things I want to mention that might be worth mentioning here for the news here. Obviously, Tank Dell is official. He's placed on IR. Very unfortunate. Very sad to see him go. But next year, I'm looking for a big year out of him. Demario Douglas did not participate on Tuesday. He's dealing with a concussion. So check that status if you're looking at starting him. Najee Harris was recently added to the injury report. Did not practice on Tuesday, December 5th. There's a knee issue going on there, so make sure you guys look into that. This could be a big game for Warren as we're entering playoff time. So we're talking fantasy football playoffs. Guys, we're looking at advice here. Warren could be massive, okay? Christian Kirk here out. It's a groin thing. You guys saw that. Caught the ball, came down, aggravated something in his groin. Really weird fall. I mean, it is a tough matchup versus position for Ridley this week, but could be a big week, especially if Christian Kirk is out, okay? Tommy DeVito will start week 14. Trevor Lawrence, apparently he avoided a season-ending injury to the ankle. He should, let me see if he's good to go. He might miss at least one, maybe 2 games for Lawrence. Be aware of that. Again, with him, avoided the season-ending injury, which is huge, okay? Stevenson, ankle, missed multiple weeks, high ankle sprain, so Ramondre Stevenson's going to be out. So, guys, we got some injuries happening here and there. Christian Watson, hamstring, he might be out. He's going to miss some time, too, as well. Make sure you monitor that as well if you're a Christian Watson owner, okay? Tyler Higbee, neck, dealing with a neck stinger from week 13, cleared concussion protocol. Puka Nacua, shoulder bothering him, diagnosed with an AC sprain, seems to have a chance of playing week 14, according to Sean McVay. I mean, what else do we got here? Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, guys. That's for the news and notes. So, again, make sure you guys are checking last minute. I might do another show on Saturday to get you guys fully prepped. So that's some of the latest news and notes here heading into playoffs for fantasy football. Very important. Now, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe. We go year round, okay? Very important. Hit that subscribe button. All right, let me pull up the optimizer here. Let me get it all set up here. We're going to start off with the quarterbacks here, going over all the optimal quarterbacks to start. We're going to go through each position, all the games, and I'm going to pull up my trusty optimizer here. All right, let's rock this. All right, so we're going to go pull up the quarterback position. Now, when we are starting quarterbacks, guys, I implore you to start your starters. Start the guys that have been consistent for you. Start the guys that have been showing up every week that took you to the playoffs, okay? This is not a time to get risky and cute with quarterbacks. If you have a starting quarterback that's been consistent, go with that, okay? But some optimal matchups here. I mean, Dak Prescott, great matchup versus Philly. He's been red hot. If you got him, you got to start him. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I wouldn't take any risks there, but he does have a good matchup. It is what it is. Justin Fields, great matchup versus Detroit. And if you look here, guys, what the nice thing about this is I've laid out all of the, we've got all of the, I'm just setting it up here, of the last couple games, how they did. So you can kind of look at consistency. Like, for example, Justin Fields, 13 and 24 the past couple games, okay? Not the greatest, but, he's been consistent, relatively inconsistent, but consistent the past couple games, I should say. So just something to be aware of. Russell Wilson been consistent the past 3 games. You can see 19, 18, and 15. He does have a good matchup versus position, just something to be aware of there. I wouldn't start Zach Wilson here. He was not even starting probably. Desmond Ridder, good matchup. Gardner Minshew, Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, all good matchups versus position, guys. If you're looking at any of these quarterbacks, these are your optimal matchups, okay? If I don't mention them, they've got mid-range, but as you can see, some of the mid-range quarterbacks, Lamar, Herbert, Purdy, they got mid-range matchups based on paper. Purdy, I would definitely start versus Seattle. Divisional game, you got Justin Herbert versus Denver. Definitely may want to consider starting him, but he's kind of been inconsistent. He hasn't been the greatest. 8 points last week. I think they put up 6 points on the game. I mean, you could say that his wide receiver core is banged up, but I don't think he's utilizing Quentin Johnson and some of the other guys. Mind you, Quentin has not played well at all, but it is what it is. But those are kind of mid-range matchups. You got your Purdy, your Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Will Levis, Jack Browning, Tua, all mid-range matchups. So something to be aware of when you are looking at quarterbacks and being aware of the matchup. How tough is the matchup? That's something you need to be aware of going in, especially if you have two quarterbacks or if you're a two-quarterback league, you need to address this, situation, right? How tough is the matchup? That does play a factor. But if you got a guy who's been consistent, you may want to start him. For example, here, Stafford, relatively consistent the past 2 games, but he does have a tough matchup versus Baltimore. If you got a better option, maybe consider that. So Stafford, Trevor Lawrence, he's banged up, so he might be a bad option here. I wouldn't start the backup either. Geno Smith, 34 points last game, 8 the week before. He's playing San Fran. If you got a better option than Geno Smith, you may want to consider it. Derek Carr, he's a little banged up here. I wouldn't start him anyway. I don't trust him. And look at his past 3 games, 11, 15, and 5. CJ Stroud, a slightly tougher matchup versus position versus the Jets, but understand he's been consistent. If you got him, I recommend CJ Stroud. You don't want to sit him. Just because I have a red matchup here and it's a tough matchup doesn't mean you got to sit him. You just got to be aware. That's all I'm saying, right? Be aware. Awareness is huge, guys. And if you're torn between 2 players, I tell people, what I do is I go and look at the player, take a look at the last 3 matchups that they had. Have they been consistent? If I'm torn between 2, how consistent are they? How much volume are they getting? And then I look at the matchup. And if I still haven't made a decision, at the end of the day, I go gut feeling if everything else is lining up the same, right? Tommy DeVito here, tough matchup. Bryce Young, Josh Allen as well, tough matchup. Although he's been consistent. He is playing KC. Could be a high-scoring affair there. So, again, Josh Allen, I would definitely start if you have him. Jordan Love as well, start worthy here. But they have slightly tougher matchups versus position, including Pat Mahomes here, okay, versus Buffalo. But, again, am I starting Pat Mahomes? If I have him, yes. Am I starting Josh Allen? Yes, but tougher matchup versus position. It's all about being aware. All right, let's move on to the running back position. Again, guys, drop your questions below. I'll try to get to as many as I humanly possibly can, all right? Let's talk about this. Let's talk about Christian McCaffrey, CMC. Now, Christian McCaffrey, or let's start off with the optimal matchups here. McCaffrey does have a good matchup, by the way. Austin Eckler, I don't trust him. But if you guys were stupid enough to draft him in the first round, I told you to avoid him. I told you he'd be a bust. You got to, I don't know. You got to start him. I don't know who else you're going to have if he's a first-round pick for you guys. Very inconsistent. He sucked all year. Austin Eckler does have a great matchup versus Denver this week. Be aware of that. Kamara, great matchup versus, position here versus Carolina. Been very solid. Start worthy. Obviously, Joe Mixon, great matchup here. A.J. Dillon, great matchup, but hasn't been the best. 10-point games on average. Nothing to write home about, but again, very easy matchup versus position. Christian McCaffrey, obviously, no common sense, got to start him. Madison, again, inconsistent here, 8 points. I mean, if you don't have a better option, I'm just showing you the optimal matchups here, guys, and giving you some opinions on it. Dameon Pierce and Singletary. Dameon Pierce looks like he's the one who's taken over here, back over, I should say. Very inconsistent all year. That was my ownership. He's been sucking. So, but he does have a good matchup. And again, looks like there's momentum going Dameon Pierce's way. 10-pointer last week. Nothing to get excited about. Good matchup. Saquon Barkley, good matchup. Zach Moss, a must start this week versus Cincy. Great matchup as well. David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Again, Montgomery seems to be the goal line guy. Jahmyr Gibbs seems to be the, change of pace / receiving back. Lining up. It's been very unfortunate because Jahmyr Gibbs is really, really good. And if Jahmyr Gibbs was actually getting the volume that he should be getting and being the workhorse that he should be, as he was when Montgomery was hurt, he would be the number 1 running back in the game. But Montgomery's there. He's being a pest. It's been beyond frustrating. but this is what we got to deal with. Okay. So again, Jahmyr Gibbs, great matchup, decent matchup versus position this week, as you can see here. Okay. I got Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't care. I'm going to start him. I'm hoping Montgomery doesn't get the work. But we saw last week, Jahmyr Gibbs gets the receiving work, gets the goal line, and they pounded it in with Montgomery. It's total crap, but it just seems like this is the way the NFL is going, unfortunately. Okay, mid-range matchups here, as you can see, we've got who do we got here? We got Pacheco, who threw a punch last game. I don't think he's gonna be suspended. Mid-range matchup here. Javonte Williams, 10 points last week, not the greatest. Zeke Elliott, he might get some work. I think he's a safe start this week. I do like it. Breece Hall, very inconsistent, 11-pointer last week, mid-range matchup as well. ATN mid-range matchup, but you got to start him, okay? Let's go through some tough matchups on paper here. Tony Pollard, what a bust he's been all year long. Tony Pollard, but lately, as of the past 3 weeks, has been relatively consistent. So it's finally starting to give his ROI on that first round draft capital. But on the season, been a huge major disappointment there, okay? Rachaad White, I wouldn't sit him, right? Do not sit because, again, he's been consistent, right? Take a look at the matchup. Second hardest versus position, but you got to start him. Zach Charbonnet, I would definitely start. Although, again, third hardest matchup versus position against San Fran. Be aware of that, right? So understand, yes, if I don't have a better option, okay, what do? I got to start my guy. How consistent has he been? He's been he's been relatively consistent. Like, he's getting me my 10 to 12 points a week. Not bad, right? He's a solid flex play RB2 slot. But be aware, it's a tougher matchup. So if he pulls up a dud or lower points, you understand going in, he had a tough matchup, okay? Josh Jacobs, kind of been down on the year. Good week last week. Tough matchup versus position. Be aware of that, okay? DeAndre Swift. Again, take a look. If I'm overlooking some guys, let me, and your guys there, take a look. You guys make a decision. You can see it here visually on the screen. DeAndre Swift, been garbage the past couple games. Tough matchup versus Dallas. Be aware. Oddchain had a good game. Mostert, again, both these guys are flex-worthy start, but understand it could go either way. So, again, could it be a Mostert game? Could it be an Oddchain game? Could it be a both of them game? Very possible, but understand this week it's slightly tougher matchup versus position, all right? Other guys, again, take a look here. If there's anyone else that, that you may want to start or considering starting, Gus Edwards has a tough start. Again, Keaton Mitchell looks like he seems to be the young dynamic guy in the passing plays, getting the work. Tough matchup. Kyron Williams, slightly tougher matchup versus position versus Baltimore. It looks like it's the 9th hardest versus position. And again, it's about being aware. Jerome Ford, safe, consistent, but tough matchup versus position. And then Jan, only 11 points. And what killed me with this is that they're still running, Tyler Algier, which is crazy. And I saw Patterson come out last week, and he only got, I think he got like 4 or 5 attempts, but he fumbled the ball, and there he's out for the next play. It's ridiculous, dude. But either way, Jan, a bit of a bust this year. Again, that's a bit of a coaching thing. It is what it is. Not much we could do. And Derrick Henry, 12th hardest matchup versus position, but you got to start him coming off a couple big weeks here. 28 points last week. Got to consider starting him, okay? So those are your running backs. Let's move on to the wide receiver. Again, drop your questions, guys. I'll try to get to as many as I possibly can, guys. Let's get to these wide receivers. Let's rip through it here. CeeDee Lamb, great matchup versus position. Brandon Cooks, you can see here the consistency of both of them. Not bad at all. Courtland Sutton, I would definitely start him. Great matchup. Been consistent pretty much all year. Love myself some Courtland Sutton. He's been a go-to target for Russell Wilson. Drake London, very inconsistent, due for a bounce back week this week in a great matchup versus Tampa Bay. You might want to consider him. Romeo Doubs, especially with Christian Watson being gone. Love Romeo Doubs this week. Jaden Reed, both great starts this week. Love the upside here, with especially if Watson sits. More volume is going to be going their way, and a great matchup versus the Giants. Love, especially for a DFS play, if you're playing daily fantasy, DraftKings, wherever you're playing. Romeo Doubs, good start this week based on matchup, based on opportunity, especially if Watson sits, okay? Elijah Moore seems to be a go-to target now. 12 points last week, definitely a start. Great matchup versus Jacksonville. Brandon Ayuk, good start this week. Who else is there? DJ Moore, great start, great matchup versus Detroit. Want to consider him. Michael Pittman, consistent the past 3 weeks. 31 points, 24 and 16. The past 3 weeks playing Cincinnati. Great matchup. Josh Downs, not as much volume. Alec Pierce, he had a big game last week. Is that going to continue? These guys are kind of like boomer bust. Seems like Pittman's the guy. But if you're playing DFS, these guys could be good value plays. Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, you may want to consider them, okay? Tyreek Hill, obviously, got to start him. Waddle, as well, pretty safe. Good matchup versus position. Metcalf, great matchup versus position as well. And Deontay Johnson, kind of inconsistent the past couple weeks, 13, 9, and 4 the past 3 weeks, three weeks in points. But, I mean, him and George Pickens always been a bit of a crapshoot with that offense, okay? Devontae Adams also decent. He's going to get the volume and a relatively easy matchup versus position. You definitely want to start him as well. Jamar Chase had himself a big game last week. Mid-range matchup, as you can see, 18, which is like right in the mid-pack here. I would definitely go ahead and start him, okay? Hopkins as well, mid-range matchup. Moving on to the tougher matchups, being aware, I would still go ahead and start Nico Collins, especially with Tank Dell out, but he does have it tough against Jets secondary. But Nico Collins, 37 points last week, no Tank Dell. I think Noah Brown is the guy to step up here. Obviously didn't get a lot of work the past couple weeks. Dell's gone, Noah Brown, Nico Collins step up. I think Noah's going to be a great DFS play. Got some upside there. But again, tougher matchup versus position, okay? Puka, Kupp, very inconsistent. Last week had good weeks. They were due for a bounce back. Both these guys, tough matchup versus position versus Baltimore. Just be aware of that. Calvin Ridley, tough matchup versus position. But if Kirk is out, he's going to have some volume going his way no matter what or who's under center. But tougher matchup versus position versus Cleveland. Adam Thielen, inconsistent the past 2 weeks. Tough matchup versus position. Who else is there here we got to talk about? Worth talking about. Chark, Mingo, tough matchup. Fourth hardest versus position here, as you can see, versus the Saints. Other tough matchups, as you can see, Mike Evans, but he does not sit. You got to start him. Seventh hardest versus position. Who else is there? Keenan Allen, he was a little banged up. Got to start him. Eighth hardest matchup versus position versus Denver. Rashee Rice, ninth hardest matchup versus position, but he's been safe and solid throughout the year. Safe floor, 10 points, playing Buffalo, tough matchup. And you got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. I would recommend starting both of them, but tough matchup versus position as well. Zay Flowers as well. Odell, tougher matchup versus position. And there you have it, guys. Those are your starts and sits. Now, if I got wide receiver. Now, if I missed anybody, and I didn't mention them, you're not seeing them here. They have a mid-range matchup. So, again, make your decisions accordingly, okay? All right, tight end. Again, I don't care if I sound like a broken record. It doesn't matter how tough their positions are or how good they are. Like, if they are putting up 10 points, you got to start him, okay? Like Evan Ingram, past 3 weeks, been relatively safe. Start him. He's got a tough matchup versus Cleveland, but he's been consistent. If he's your only tight end, start him, right? Pat Freiermuth. He's got the fourth hardest matchup position. This is on paper, right? But, if he's your only tight end, you got to start him, right? You can't sit guys that have been consistent, even though their matchup is tough. So be aware of that, okay? Travis Kelce, ninth hardest matchup versus position here at Buffalo, but you're not sitting Travis Kelce, right? But I like pulling this up because it gives me, awareness on how tough the matchup is on paper. Hawkinson, I'm starting him, right? George Kittle, right? Mid-range matchup. I'm starting George Kittle, right? You got to start him. Kyle Pitts, he's kind of hit or miss, but if he's your only tight end, you got to start him. Sam Laporta never sits on my team. Sam Laporta is a definite must start. And let's go through some of these good matchups here at tight end, just so you're aware. Gerald Everett, all of the Chargers tight ends, good matchups here. Hayden Hurst, he's done nothing the past 3 games, but if you're looking at Carolina tight ends, whoever's starting, good matchup, but I'm not starting anybody from Carolina. So even though their matchups are good, don't start any Carolina tight ends because they can't do anything, right? So again, good matchup, bad situation. Be aware. Jake Ferguson, great matchup. Got to start him, right? He's playing Philly. He's been decent. Had a good week last week with 20 points. I would start him, though. Cole Kmet, good matchup. Boring the past 3 weeks, but again, if you get 10 points, go for it. Conklin, good matchup versus Houston. I would start him. Again, it's just like feeling it out. Sam Laporta, again, start him. I would go ahead. I'm going to go into defense in a sec, but again, it's about feeling it out. What does it look like? Is a volume there? Is a player being consistent? What does the matchup look like? Who's throwing the ball? How much volume are they getting? So it's like taking all this stuff to make that decision, because it's fantasy football playoffs times. You cannot mess around here at all. Now with defenses, some good defenses stream. There's some really good matchups here for defense. I do love the Packers versus the Giants. This is no joke. Texans versus the Jets. Steelers versus New England. Saints versus Carolina. Like, all of these are good matchups. Lions versus Chicago. I mean, Lions, they could have some issues there if Fields gets it going. Jacksonville versus Cleveland, right? No Watson. So you got to consider that. So again, this is a guideline of some of the defensive matchups I do like. But again, Packers, Texans, Steelers, Saints, Lions, all great matchups here going into this week. And as you can see, some of the tougher matchups, 49ers versus Seattle. I mean, you could say that these are tough. But again, this is based on the algorithm, based on how the matchups have been the entire season, okay? So something to look at for sure. All right, that's it, really. I mean, if you have any specific questions, drop them below. Guys, this is fantasy football playoffs time to get serious. Drop your questions below. I'll try to get to as many as I can. And again, make sure you guys are subscribed. We're going to go year round. So as soon as fantasy is over, we're starting to roll into next year, talk about the highs and lows of this year, and start really rolling out that content. Once that calendar turns, and Super Bowl is over, we are full flow fantasy football 2024. So this doesn't end here, guys. It's just the beginning. All right, guys, subscribe, thumbs up. Appreciate you guys, and good luck. Week 14 is here. It's happening fast. Starts and sits week 14 for you. Subscribe, thumbs up. Appreciate you guys. Have a good week. I'm out.